For Halloween, I would like to share esoteric secrets on death and afterlife and the greatest knowledge that we as human beings can cultivate in this life. So a lot of secret societies, we can name a few of them, but there are many and many throughout time and space on planet Earth and in other systems and other realms. But all of these sort of secret societies that work with esoteric secrets and esoteric teachings, one of them I'm sure we all know, the ancient Egyptians, they worked a lot with the knowledge of death and afterlife. And basically, death and afterlife holds a very sacred knowledge, and that is how to navigate. So when I say death and when I say afterlife, I'm basically talking about a navigation. Right? So when we think about the Buddhists and the meditation to reach enlightenment so that you don't aimlessly keep reincarnating again and again, right? And when we talk about in the Sikh religion about mantra and mantra recitation as an important element to create that sort of enlightened state where you can cross through the blue ether when you die, and you can exit out of the matrix, right? You can exit out of the sort of illusions of this particular third dimensional plane. So, with Halloween and it being a Day of the Dead, right? It being a day where the veil is very thin from this, this realm, we'll say, this dimension, to the infinite other realms and systems and other places, right? So a lot of times Halloween is associated with the medium, right? And the medium very much has the knowledge, and usually the medium has a lineage of this sort of practice of knowing how to navigate. And the same thing goes with the shaman. The shaman and the medium, in many ways, both have the knowledge on navigation, how to navigate through realms upon realms, right? Dimensions and their systems, right? So we can talk about, there's the ghost, the ghost land, right? And you can tap into that dimension, and then there's higher dimensions and lower dimensions, right? So a lot of again, there's different modalities, and there's different, you can say, tools, methodologies, and techniques that are basically the same thing, right, on teaching you how to navigate. And when we die, right, all of these sort of religions and the practice, either it's mantra recitation, either it's a prayer, either it's a meditation that you practice in order to really find yourself, right? Because when we think of death, we think of many times we think we just return back into the nothingness, right? The nothingness. And those people who have been working with, for example, ayahuasca ceremony, have that experience of kind of going into the great expansion, right? The great everything at once, right? And a lot of people return back to their body quite overwhelmed, right? And that's why for a lot of times ayahuasca ceremony, you must have a shaman as a guide, right? It's something that you don't do by yourself, just kind of with your friends, just, for the whim, right? Because you can get into these realms and dimensions, and if you don't know how to navigate, you don't know how to unlock energy, you don't know how to move energy, you can get kind of caught in it, right? You can get confused and kind of not know what's going on, right? And where you are. So the great expansion that, people have in like ayahuasca ceremony, where they're like, whoa, right, this is alchemical reality. Wow, it is so expansive, right? It is so creatively sublime and extraordinary. And that's kind of that's going on, right? When we think of the universe, and how explosive and expansive and exalted and ecstatic it all is, that really is what's happening right here. Is just we've consolidated and, all of that kind of massive energy into this finite container, right? So that we can kind of organize it, and so that we can kind of relate to it, and so that we can kind of shape it and interact with it. But the great knowledge, as navigation, is also, in this lifetime, the what you are in this lifetime is basically what you are when you die, right? So it's very important. That's why, all of these sort of religions we talk about, have a prayer or a blessing or a mantra or meditation, or even a form of yoga or a form of dance therapy, or, song, even a ritual, as a way to help you become your most authentic self, so you can liberate yourself in the physical realm, so that if you were to die, you're not going to be, you're going to know how to deliver yourself to other places. Just like when we manifest here on this earth, we do the same thing when we die. We kind of manifest our way through different realms and different systems. And I know for a lot of us, because we're on earth, and we don't really have relations with other planets, right? A lot of people, they learn about the planets in the solar system and that kind of thing, but they don't really have a relationship with Mars or with Venus or Pluto, And as, a lot of these secret societies that work with these esoteric teachings, they have a lot of sort of background in evolutionary astrology, right? And that has everything to do with, these planets, and not just the planets in our system, but we can also deal with other systems, right? So, when we die, we're not just dealing with this system, we're also dealing with other systems and realms, right? And a lot of these secret societies, the sort of goal is spiritual maturity, because with spiritual maturity, that's you know how to navigate, right? And you start to understand the difference between like false gold and real gold, illusion, deception versus reality, right? Because on this earth, we do have a matrix system that was installed a long time ago, by a particular group, as a sort of control, right? And, we have to deal with that, and we have to know how to maneuver ourselves through that. And, this earth, there's all kinds of agendas, there's all kinds of programs and belief systems, and we can take them on, and we can really sort of disconnect from that authentic frequency I like to call the soul signature that we have. And the reason why people are drawn to like a meditation or mantra recitation, or even a religion, a prayer, a blessing, a sort of sacred path, is because they understand that death is simply you're just transitioning energy, right? So if you have no idea how to maneuver energy in this physical realm, like, you bet you're going to feel very limited when you die. You're going to be codependent on the guides or the angels to kind of, figure out, okay, where do I go next? What do I do, right? So that's why, it's very important in this life, in this moment now, that you do work on these expansive words such as affirmation and visualization and imagination and creativity, because all of that is going to be used when you do die, and you're going to have to travel, right? And you're going to have to decide, like, your next phase of your evolution, right? And, a lot of the wealth, right? When we think about the wealth in the form of talent and tool and skill and strengths that we have with us, that we've had with us for many, many lifetimes, that we use to help us in this lifetime clear karma, or to reach our destiny, or to really, build up a caliber, or build up self-esteem, self-worth, and we do this in many different lifetimes, as a sort of assignment, or sort of, a lesson, right? As a kind of education of for our self-mastery. And it's very important, when we are dead, the main thing that we're doing, right, kind of like evolutionary astrology, is that we are traveling. We are interdimensional travelers. We travel the distance, right? Just like when we travel to Spain, or we travel to a different geographic region like Russia or Germany or South America, you're dealing with a different, vortex. And you need to know how to kind of maneuver yourself through that, so you don't get stuck in it. You don't get caught in the belief system. You don't get caught in the conflict. You don't get wrapped up in the karma of that geographic region, and then you kind of sink into it, you sort of interlock with it, and then you can become attached to it, right? And then start to kind of linger, in that kind of vortex. So we build up our energy through prayer, blessing, or mantra recitation, or meditation, as a way to create the sovereignty of our mind, so that that authentic accord we have with ourself can be like that voice of reason, so that we can travel and gain knowledge, diversity of knowledge, and insight and understanding. But we're not getting attached, we're not lingering, we're not getting caught up in it, and we're kind of getting interlocked with the karma of that, right? Because a lot of people are starting to recognize, that there is a lot more to this to this experience of life. And as we move forward, we're going to have a lot more individuals having, these kinds of transcendental experiences of, like, Pleiades, and like the Lyran beings, and the Deer beings, and the Syrian beings, and the future timelines, and ancient past, right? These type of things. And all of that kind of awareness is navigation. Just like when you remote view, which is also a secret society kind of practice, you have to navigate, right? You have to have a focus, you have to have a projection, you have to have an imagination, and you have to have a penetration, right? To go to this time and space, right? And you also have to have a sensitivity and a self-trust to kind of correlate what is going on in that whatever you're remote viewing. Even like Edgar Cayce, with him channeling future timelines, the past, like Lemuria, Atlantis, channeling like other planets, channeling medicine of all kinds of tapping into the Akashic record. It's like going into a library. You need to know, like, what is what. And when we start to kind of look at the life from that perspective, as we're learning how to navigate, just like we're learning how to kind of maneuver ourselves through a library, right? You're going to be a lot more efficient. You're going to be a lot more directive, intentional. You're not just going to reincarnate with just anybody, and you're not just going to kind of hang out, like walking around like this kind of confusion, right? So you become more sort of precise, and you become a lot more commanding and powerful, because it's like you know where you're going, you know what you're doing, and you can kind of see things for what they are. But in order to do that, to have that kind of sort of spiritual understanding, is that we do have to go into this life, and we have to take risks. And sometimes we'll fail. And we have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to, we have to clear the karma, and there's going to be life lessons, and we're going to have to pass these life lessons, and we're going to have to be dedicated and devoted, and we got to work through our astrological chart. We have to heal ourselves, right? In order to find ourselves, which is that authentic. And whenever we're working with an authentic vibration, we're working with an energy that's liberated, meaning an energy that isn't seduced, that isn't interlocked, that isn't tied, that isn't attached to whatever kind of program, belief system, or kind of fear that has them kind of holding back, right? That has them in a state of dullness or in a state of shame or constant judgment. Liberation is that kind of shameless essence that children have, where they don't necessarily know themselves, like what they're going to do for their job, or what they like, it's constantly changing, but they do have this knowing of their freedom, their self-expression, right? Their creativity, their wonder, their imagination, and that sort of possibility to basically you could be anything. And as we become an adult, we lose that, right? So this is a teaching that is very, very, the kind of we call the root of it, right? Of all these religions and spiritual practices are all kind of dealing with this, how to navigate through time and space, so that you're not just reincarnating again and again, and you're not just carrying the burdens or the baggage of other people and carrying that with you into future lives. You're starting to work with your creativity, and you're allowing your creativity to really help you clear karma, but also to move forward to mature. So whenever we're dealing with trauma or pain or mistakes, creativity is how we build ourselves up. Creativity is used for character development, courage, self-esteem, and self-worth, right? So when and kids, the reason why we love kids and we protect kids, because they are the very essence of creativity, right? Because they have a fearlessness, they have like a self-freedom, they have a sovereignty where they're very much connected to these other systems, realms, and dimensions. They're not earthbound. They might be here and they're listening and they're doing what the parents say or whatever, but their sort of embodiment is very interdimensional. And children are, that's why they sleep a lot, right? Especially babies, right? Because they're traveling all the time, just like when shamans travel. Shamans don't even have to sleep. They don't even have to meditate really to travel. It's just like Edgar Cayce. I mean, you can just close your eyes, kind of like a yogi can just kind of fall asleep within 3 to 9 seconds, just because that's how meditated the mind is, right? And you can just travel, and then you can come back and you can gain the knowledge from whatever vortex or whatever place you went to. And that's what's happening with the moons, the full moons, the new moons. It's basically opening up timelines. It's opening up possibilities, dimensions that we are always kind of crossing through to gain some sort of insight or perspective to help us in this time make the best sort of maneuver, right? We're all kind of making maneuvers and making decisions based off of our creative destiny. And all of us have a creative destiny, and we're working towards that, and it's not necessarily linear like destination, because it's very multidimensional and spherical. It's not like, I gotta get there, like on a road trip, I'm trying to get to that thing that's on this sort of line. It's a shape-shifting experience, your creative destiny. It's really about your creative destiny is you kind of making peace with your reality and learning how to be a better manifester of reality, how to be more constructive, corrective, and creative with your time and space, right? And see how much creativity that you can pump through this embodiment, right? Just like when we think of the Tesla and Einstein, Da Vinci, they had a particular creative destiny where they were able to really embody a very cosmic, high cosmic frequency in this third dimensional space, right? Because they had a particular knowing of navigation, right? Just like when we feel called to move to, like, I don't know, called to move to like Denmark, or called to move to Canada or something like that, or we're called to connect with someone, or we're called to take a class, or have a retreat. All of that we're navigating to kind of help us spiritually mature, right? And the more that we do kind of learn how to be accountable and responsible for ourselves and our own freedom and our own liberation, we're actually going to really build up this sort of undeniable manifestation of our reality. And then when we die, that's so when we die and we got all these ties to people, and we didn't listen to ourselves, and we were in a marriage that that it should have ended 10 years ago, all of that, when we die, we have a life review, and all of that must be faced. And the ways that we've been holding back from our liberation, shaming ourselves, judging ourselves, all of that has to be basically dismantled in order for us to open up to these even, more expansive frequencies of ourselves. We can't carry these sort of fear-based, limiting excuses and complaints with death, and as we try to go into even more expansive frequencies of ourselves, we can't. We have to clear that out. So a lot of people, in order to really clear it out, is you have to be physical, right? So people think, oh, I'll just die, and then all of that, and then the next life I'll just have a better life, and it doesn't really work like that. It's either in the physical realm, there needs to be a liberation, right? You have to grow that energy in the life force of this physical body, right? And in many lifetimes we do die young. We could die in child's birth, we could die in a fire, drown, in war, illness. There's so many, we've died so many times, and if you're listening to this, you've probably have reached a certain number of deaths in your many lifetimes where you are ready to receive the teaching. Not everybody's ready to receive this knowledge, because we need to have a certain can say amount of deaths, right, in lifetimes, to be able to really understand how important the life force is in this life that we're living, and how to navigate through it, so that you're not just what we call about the common mediocre type of life. You become this sort of creator, right? And that is something that is why we pray, and do self-blessing or meditate or mantra recitation or healing, is because we want to become the creator. Because once we recognize, that God and me are one, that type of, every religion is basically that mantra, God and me and God are one, right? Regardless of, the sort of, the difference of that expression. Because when, a human being recognizes that and takes accountability for their karma and all of that, there's a sense of liberation, and there's a sense of great movement forward, right? That you earn this sort of spiritual maturity. And as you continue to go forward, you start to gain these sort of spiritual gifts. When we talk about, the medium and the shaman, and they have these sort of gifts, like psychic gifts. They have clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, these type of gifts, right? They could have a gift of knowing, herbal medicine. They could have a gift of, painting, of a gift of being a doula or midwife. They could have a gift of channeling. I mean, there's so many, but you gain that through the kind of the authentic sort of integration you have in this life, right? And the most authentic integration that we can hold in this embodiment, this grounded form, is liberation. So even if it's just one recitation of like Satnam, or if it's just one, you go to the theater and you watch the ballet and you die after that type of thing, right? Sometimes that's all that that's all that is required, right? Or for you to really understand your authentic creative movement, so that when you do die, that authentic creative movement has a direction, has a tension in it, has a vision that will carry you on and to carry you away, so that you won't just reincarnate because you don't, you're limited. Some people just reincarnate because they feel, bound. They have the shame, the judgment, the trauma, the karma with these people, or these even geographic regions that they have to clear, right? And the only way to clear is liberation. So that could be facing your fear, right? That could be a sort of healing that you do in that life with this person that you've had karma with, right? It could be, taking back your power. Maybe you gave this person a lot of power in a past life, or maybe you were almighty powerful and you took power away from people, so you have to balance out the scales, right? So that we can be in this state, this sort of wholeness within ourselves, where we can have experiences and we can move through time and space and not get sort of interlocked in really creating more karma with it, and getting very confused and being very destructive, or being very wrapped up in a belief system, a program that has you out of yourself, right? Because that authentic vibration inside of us really wants to experience the creative destiny, right? And that could be many things. It could be healing from a childhood wound. It could be making peace with a relative. I mean, it can be expressing yourself when you've been heavily belittled or even oppressed. It can be really bringing expansion to your lineage. It can be about so many things, but these movements that we make, where we start to feel very energetic and very enthusiastic, like a child. So, when we die, when an adult dies and a child dies, is very different. When a child dies, there's this, because they have so much enthusiasm and they have so much creative movement, that they kind of just move gracefully out of the matrix, right? While adults sometimes, when they die, it's like they're still in the matrix, even though they're not physical, right? So they have to, in this other place, we'll say, they have to kind of work through that, right? And they have to figure out, wait a minute, I'm dead. This is the matrix. I gotta maneuver myself through that. And the only way we do that is we have to embody that creative destiny in us, that most energetic, enthusiastic, part of ourselves in order to, really clear, get out of the matrix and the karma and, these cycles of ourself where we hold a lot of trauma, or, we get in cycles that can be destructive for ourselves, that can be, cycles that we're in for a lot of a lot of lifetimes, that, it's time for us to mature, right? And that, creative destiny is our willingness to mature, to evolve, even though it's uncomfortable, even though we have to let people go, right? But there's a sense of liberation in kind of recognizing the grace in letting go, and the grace of allowing people to mature and evolve, and allowing yourself to, in your time, in your space, in your creative pursuit. So I just wanted to share about the knowledge of death and afterlife, and kind of the secret teaching that is practiced by many different religions, or we could say secret societies, as a very important teaching for not just this lifetime, because these societies in many ways are, religions, think about that, they're looking at the bigger picture. We're not just this life, we're many lifetimes, right? So when we start to kind of spiritually awaken, we'll say, we start to understand how expansive we are. And it's important to understand, expansion and how you can experience that all, because when you do tap into that expansiveness of time and space in this physical body, what happens is you start to have more of imagination and more of a sort of more perspective, and you start to have more of an alchemical sort of potential with this life, right? Where you start to kind of deal with situations or circumstances, pains, traumas from a different perspective, from the perspective of transmutation, transformation, even transcendence, even like healing, from perspective of deep healing and self-mastery. So that's why, we get to a point in our life where we do desire to gain knowledge on evolutionary astrology or something, right? Or go to sacred sites, or go to the temple, or do the prayer, the mantra recitation, because we understand as we tap into expansion, we ourselves become more expansive. Therefore, our experiences, our life partner, our friends, our kind of life experiences become more evolutionary in the way that we maneuver through them a lot more free-flowing, and a lot with a greater sense of victory in it than I'm trapped, victim, just put up with this, I'll just settle, I'm not good enough. And then kind of playing out that kind of matrix illusion and deception we do with ourselves.